This segment plays bittersweet now. Bittersweet. Because at the time this broke, it seemed like the Democrats were going to stand down and Biden was going to be in the race. And so his speech before the NAACP seemed more newsworthy. Now, admittedly, this is perhaps the last time we'll be making fun of a Joe Biden speech on the campaign trail, since he could drop out any day. So Joe Biden appeared before the NAACP and gave a speech, and we are about to show some of the lowlights here. So this is perhaps the last one of these type of segments that we will ever do on this show. And I have mixed feelings about that, as I'm sure you all do as well. So let's take a look. First, here
I am really looking forward to shifting the focus to Cackle and Kamala.
Yeah, right, exactly. That'll be fun. So, but it'll be different. It'll be different. This is perhaps
it will be different.
Our farewell to Joe Biden. Here he is at the NAACP conference.
I know you say, Joe, you may not have a Congress. Well, guess what? You all told me I couldn't pass the Inflation Reduction Act. You all told me I couldn't face it. Anyway, we did it. We're going to bring rents down, as I said. We're going to build 2 million affordable homes and cap rent increases of 5% a year so corporate landlords can't. God. Anyway, I don't want to get going. I'm going to get very upset.
I don't want to get going. Hey, listen, I don't want to get started on explaining what my policies are. The hell with that. So, I mean, what are you there for then? I'm going to cap rent whatever. Yeah, doesn't matter. I'm not actually going to do it. I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know why I haven't quit yet. So, the hell with it.
He's been using that to save himself for a while. If you remember, there was that very squirmy interview he did with Nicole Wallace early on, where he clearly was just in outer space, and he kept, and so anyway, and she just had that smile frozen on her face, like she didn't know what to do. So it's anyway. Lately he doesn't use this one, but they'll get mad at me if I keep talking.
Right, yeah. He used to do that. He used to do that one.
But there's gouging America. And by the way, not only saves lives, it will save taxpayers. Just what I did on the first round on dealing with Medicare. It saves the taxpayer $160 billion. Because they don't have to pay these exorbitant prices to these, anyway.
Oh, God. All right, now this, so he says earlier in the speech he's going to cap rent increases at 5%. Well, anyway, later on here he is trying to make that same point, but apparently he misreads the teleprompter and doesn't know the policy well enough to say 5%. So instead, he makes a promise that we know he can't live up to.
The idea that corporate-owned housing is able to raise your rent $300-400 a month or something, under what I'm about to announce, they can't raise it more than $55.
So it says 5% on the screen. He can't read that, so he says he can't raise it more than $55, which of course is not true. And in certain communities, $300 to $400, as sick as this sounds, is probably within the 5% gap, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting hearing this conversation as a New Yorker because, of course, we have this,
right? And
generally, the rent guidelines will come in around 5% for a 2-year lease,
right?
Somewhere around there. So. Yeah, as a New Yorker, it's weird when you go to other parts of the country to know you have no protection, that they could just raise your rent $1,000 next month. It's just not like that here. It hasn't been like that here in generations. Like it's not a recent thing. We don't really have rent control. Those apartments have to be inherited.
Right.
They stopped that program like in the 50s. So the only rent controlled apartments have been passed on.
Right.
But rent stabilization covers a huge portion of the rental market in New York.
I think about half.
Yeah, well, and 1/8 of apartments in New York are public housing.
Right.
In addition to that. So it's a relatively small number of people who are just subject to the market. That's the luxury part of the market is not covered by stabilization. So, apartments that are $7,000 a month, there's no stabilization. That just goes by the market rate. There's a certain, I forget what the cap is, like a 2-bedroom, a certain amount of money. If it's below that, it's not in the luxury category, and it's automatically covered under rent stabilization. But the city council votes every year on what those increases are going to be. For a couple of years, they voted 0. There were no rent increases for a couple of years.
Yep.
Now, I think this year they voted like 3 and 6% on the 1 and 2 year lease. This is why in New York, this is a game people play. This is why I'm in the same building for 17 years. Because I moved into Harlem knowing that Harlem would get expensive. If you get into a neighborhood before it gets expensive, because of that rent stabilization, very quickly your rent is going to be half the market rate, which is pretty much where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was in Williamsburg in a rent stabilized place, and it was about half the market rate. We just got in because a friend of my wife's was moving to Georgia, and she gave it to us. She just let us move in there. That's how that works. But yeah, no, $55, not the actual policy aim, 5%. It wasn't done yet. Here's the big whopper here.
Go figure. From a guy who spread the birthism lie against Barack Obama, saying he wasn't born in America and he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States.
Cracker ass, cracker, put my foot in the cracker ass,
That was Chris Rock there. Chris Rock gave him a little mouth for that.
Yeah, he didn't appreciate that
crowd.
line.
Did not appreciate that line. It's like saying, you know what a black job is? Assistant principal. Yeah.
I mean, God bless him. He hasn't done one of those in a long time. He has not done one of those in a long time. This is how I always describe Joe Biden. Biden's idea of being liberal on race is the idea of a guy in a VF hall in 1977, VFW hall. Like, that's he thinks of himself as liberal on race.
Yeah.
And he thinks
exactly.
saying things like that is acceptable because that's where he is. I'm the guy in the VFW hall who thinks they should be allowed to eat with us. I'm a liberal.
Right. And obviously he meant that as a clapback, but he could have said like Supreme Court justice or something like that. If like that comes out pretty off. But even before that, when he's talking to them, he says, this is the guy who said Obama wasn't born here, or what does that say about it's all of Biden's talking points, not just here, but at the debate as well. It's just all about Trump's character. It's all about the things he says that are offensive and gross and off-putting.
Same campaign Hillary ran.
Yeah, there's no policy whatsoever. No policy whatsoever. What can he point to and say, here's what I've done for you that is not symbolic, right? Whether it's trashing Trump for the Obama birth certificate thing, or even appointing a black woman to the Supreme Court. Again, these are symbolic gestures of recognition, if you will. They are not actual, tangible goals that he has fulfilled for ordinary people. You get none of that. You get none of that anywhere. And this is why they're doomed no matter who they run. The question is, can you actually run? Can you literally run with Biden, or can you not even run? But no matter who they run, this is all they have. And this is why, if you look at the RNC the first 3 nights, and now Trump's speech coming up tonight, and we'll get to this in the next segment a bit, but not only is that convention going well for them, but the vibe in that room is as mellow and light and as cool as can be. It is light as a feather in that room because they're they are so confident, and they have every reason to be.
Please clap.